At the sect, everyone was caught up in their own stuff. Some were training, others were running errands, and a few just hung around, chatting or minding their business. Out of nowhere, a small group started moving through the crowd, catching a few glances as they passed by. People started to notice a guy walking past. He had tied something around his waist, catching a few curious glances as he moved through the crowd. He tied a kitchen knife to a rope and pulled it along behind him, almost like he was walking a dog. The guys hanging around couldn't believe what they were seeing. Usually people would walk around with their spirit beasts, but today, someone was out there with a kitchen knife floating along beside them like it was a pet. One of the younger disciples almost said something out loud, but another one quickly stopped him, pointing out that the knife belonged to one of the top guys from Kai Peak, Yuan. Everyone knew better than to mess around or draw attention when someone from Kai Peak was involved. As soon as that happened, the other disciples started whispering to each other. Some of them traded stories, saying they'd heard he liked to mess with people and always claimed everyone's training was dangerous. A couple of them warned their friends to stay quiet, since the guy had a reputation for being unpredictable. They glanced over at him, clearly wondering how he managed to sit in the spot of the fifth senior brother when he hadn't even reached the level everyone expected. The group kept their voices low, not wanting to attract his attention, but it was obvious they all thought something was off about him. Things felt awkward, could catch every whisper around him. Everyone was eyeing him, and yeah, he was the guy the story was about. People were calling him strange or saying he was up to something, maybe even a little unhinged. But honestly, just new stuff that no one else did, real dangers that everyone else missed. He finally stepped up and let them know who he was, a cultivator from the sect and someone who'd come from another world. Chi Yuan wondered if he actually had a system. This thing could dig up all the details about the other disciples. The first guy was new, just joined the sect and still figuring things out. The second was already a senior attendant over at Divine Medicine Peak, probably used to all the routines by now. The third one had trained so hard that he lost control and went crazy. Honestly, it didn't look like he would make it much longer. The fourth was just scraping by, barely managing to gather enough resources to hit Foundation establishment. But the way he got there was risky, and it could draw the attention of some really weird and dangerous things. After checking out all this info, Chi Yuan sat back, thinking things through. Ever since he ended up in this new world, things have been strange. He could see labels floating above everyone in the sect, and even objects had random notes on them. It sounded cool at first, but it just made life harder. This world already had enough problems, but now he had to deal with even more drama. Once someone in this place reached Foundation establishment, they basically turned into a target for weird, unknown creatures. That made leveling up pretty much impossible. Right then, something hit him. He realized he'd completely spaced out and forgotten what he was supposed to do. He took off running. Today was the day they picked new disciples. The view moved to the front of NSEC's main hall. There, the disciple selection was all ready, with people gathering, and the atmosphere buzzing with excitement and nerves. Chi Yuan from Chi Peak still hadn't shown up. Some people noticed and started looking around, wondering where he was. The older guys just shrugged, since everyone knew how Chi Yuan was. He liked to do his own thing. He was part of the One Track of Madness sect and preferred staying by himself. Showing up late didn't really surprise anybody. It was just how he rolled. The narrator talked about the One Track of Madness sect and how the people in it get super hooked on just one thing, like a sword, a flower, or sometimes even another person. They take their obsession way too far, to the point where it messes with their heads. In the world of cultivators, everyone knows them as, and most people try to stay out of their way. Com sat there, getting more and more annoyed. The new guys hadn't even shown up yet, but the senior brother was already running late. It really didn't look good, especially since everyone was supposed to be looking up to him. Right at that moment, Kai Yuan showed up. The energy in the room changed as everyone realized he was there. Wasn't happy about it. He shot a sharp look at Kai Yuan, obviously annoyed. Now that everyone had gathered, it was finally time to kick off the disciple selection. Someone started laying out how things were going to work. Today was a big day. The 5 Peaks were getting ready to pick their new disciples. His name was well known, and people from all over came hoping to train here. But only the very best stood a chance at becoming true successors of the 5 Peaks. The ones standing at the front now had all proven themselves by ranking at the top in the assessments. These guys were seriously talented, the kind that everyone talked about. As the moment got started, Khan stepped forward and began to introduce the senior disciples. The disciples from each peak started to gather. Showed up from Du Hun Peak looking calm and confident like he always did. From Kai Peak, Kai Yuan arrived, standing out with his serious vibe. Both of them seemed ready for whatever was about to happen, and everyone around could tell these two weren't just ordinary students. 2 senior students showed up, one from Peak and the other from Divine Medicine Peak. Stood out at Peak, everyone knew him as the guy who loved to brag and show off, always talking up his skills. He wasn't just any disciple. He had special status since he was the closed-door student of Peak and also the son-in-law of Sex Leader. With all that, he'd become a master of sacred arts and even came up with his own move, the small sunlight technique. On top of it all, he was the chief, so people paid attention when he walked by. As the disciple from Peak walked in, everyone else lowered their heads to show respect. The other disciples, seeing their seniors, made sure to greet them properly. started showing off, acting way too confident. The whole group just froze for a second, caught off guard by how bold he was. Scanned the group and noticed one guy who seemed different from the rest. He looked like he had the potential, was looking for someone who'd be a good fit for the techniques he wanted to teach. Made a mental note to pick him out before anyone else could. He looked around at the group, wondering how they'd decide which 7 to pick. One of the older guys didn't say anything, just thought to himself that if the guy wanted to go first, he should just say so. The air was a little tense, with everyone waiting to see what would happen next. Yang stepped forward. Before they got here, their teacher had told them what to do. This time, Chi Peek would get to pick first. Yang reminded everyone about it. Kai Peek never really picked anyone, at least not for a long time. People outside talked a lot, saying the other 4 peaks pushed Kai Peek around. When heard stuff like that, he got pretty mad. He wasn't about to just sit there and listen. If everyone wanted to talk, he'd be the first to step up and make a choice. Felt pretty confident that nobody could really challenge him when it came to outdoing. He knew hadn't even bothered to look at the list of candidates yet, so decided to let go first, thinking there was no way he'd pick the one with the light spirit path. No matter what, was sure the best talent would end up at his own peak. He called out to, telling him to make his choice. Seemed to snap out of his thoughts and stepped forward, ready to pick. As things moved forward, the disciples started getting hyped. On the other peaks, loads of guys were fighting for a spot, but over at Kai Peak, there was only one disciple. That meant all the resources over there would go to him alone. Everyone else could only watch and wish they were in his shoes. Chi Yuan figured he should do what his master asked. If he needed to pick a disciple and help Chi Peek get more attention, he wanted to make sure he chose the right person for the job. He looked over at the same guy had been watching. Right away, started to freak out, wondering if he'd been caught. Sweat started to drip down his face as he tried to play it cool. Looked over the boy standing in front of him. The kid seemed pretty normal, nothing special at first glance, but could tell he wasn't there just to learn. He had his own reasons for wanting in. Not trusting him, decided to turn him away. Let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. He figured he'd just been overthinking everything. There was no way size could ever compare to his own. Then, a girl walked up. Kai Yuan checked her out too. She looked like an ordinary girl, but there was something different about her that most people wouldn't notice. The old black chicken demon seemed weirdly attached to her, always calling her his cauldron or something. Kai Yuan thought this could spell trouble for Wan's group. Chi Yuan noticed right away that her body was different, and honestly, it seemed risky. He didn't want to get involved, so he quickly moved on to the next person. Then it was Chi Yuan's turn to step forward. Chi Yuan looked the boy over. Just an average kid, nothing special. He used to have some power, about 2 years' worth, but now it was all gone. Deep down, there was something strange, some old soul hidden away in his mind. Before this, the boys had already dumped him, ending their engagement before he even thought about joining sect. Chi Yuan just shook his head and moved on. He could already tell this kid was trouble, the kind that would drag someone into a mess if they got too close. Taking him in as a student was just asking for problems. Another candidate showed up and things got weird. It was a boy on the outside, but he acted just like a girl. Chi Yuan didn't like it at all. He thought it was creepy and instantly decided this one wasn't making the cut. Next up was a guy with 3 legs. Kai Yuan couldn't help but make a face. This just made things even more awkward. No luck here either. He got turned down right away. Another guy stepped up next, but honestly nothing really stood out about him. Just like before, he didn't make it through. Rubbed his head, tired of dealing with all the mess in the sect. Not long ago, just 3 months back, he'd found out the sect leader was actually a spy from the Demon Lust sect. Had called him out, but instead of thanks, he got locked up for days. After that, he promised himself he wouldn't get involved in exposing any more secrets or trouble in the sect. Sat there, his mind running in circles. He kept telling himself that if everything was messed up, maybe nothing really mattered. It was his way of trying to feel better about things, even if it didn't really help. Sugar was in the same boat, stuck with the same thought, trying to calm himself down. Both of them were just looking for a way to make sense of it all, hoping that thinking this way would make things a little easier. Watched Chi Yuan and couldn't help but wonder if he was really about to turn everyone down again. Looked annoyed, trying to figure out what was going on. If Chi Yuan kept acting like this, people would start talking, and the other peaks would probably pick on Kai Peek again. At last, the final candidate showed up. The system pointed out a regular girl, someone who doesn't really stand out at first but has this mysterious vibe. She seemed to have a thing for the head of Kai Peek, though she tried to keep it low-key. Was caught off guard by his own thoughts about the head. He started thinking of her as his rival, someone he needed to beat no matter what. He was all set to push her away, ready to say no, when something unexpected happened. The girl got down on one knee, looking serious. She introduced herself as and let everyone know how much she respected the older student from Kai Peek. You could tell she really hoped he'd notice her, and maybe let her join Kai Peek too. Everyone just stopped and stared. Nobody expected to actually have fans. Even couldn't believe it. He never thought was that popular. Stood there, catching everyone's attention without even trying. He couldn't help but feel a little suspicious. She was always so focused on what was going on, almost like she had something else in mind. That's when the system popped up with her background info. Turns out, she was a direct descendant of the clan. Ling started sharing her story. With her family's reputation, she normally wouldn't even look twice at a sect like Wan's. He knew it was his turn to step in. About a month back, his bloodline finally kicked in. That meant he could actually use the family's prized treasure, the mirror, the one they'd kept safe for generations. He remembered watching his father fall during the chaos of battle while his mother's blood stained the palace floors. Everything he knew was being destroyed, the whole continent torn apart. Even the oceans weren't the same anymore. Out of everything, it looked like only the small insect was left standing. Maybe they had someone strong enough to protect them. That was probably the reason they made it through. The family's old mirror flashed an image of what was coming, like a heads-up from fate itself. He knew he couldn't talk about it, though. If he let the secret slip, the memory would just vanish from his mind. He knew he had to get into the sect, and Kai Peak seemed like the choice. The leader there had a mysterious vibe and was known for being really strong. Maybe he was even the master everyone talked about. Plus, Kai Peak only had one disciple, so joining up and looking around wouldn't be too hard. Ling remembered what people usually said about cultivators who went a bit wild. Those guys didn't care about much, kept to themselves, and never bothered with helpers or attendants. She figured she could use that to her benefit. If it meant protecting her loved ones and maybe even making a difference in the world, she figured a small sacrifice was no big deal for her. She spoke quietly, not wanting to draw too much attention. Ling stepped forward, his voice echoing through the room. He made it clear he'd do anything to help out, even if it meant working for him or taking on all the tough jobs no one wanted, and stared at him, surprised by how far was willing to go. Stood there, taking it all in. Ling's eyes went wide, and he just froze, not sure what to do next. Everything around him seemed to stop for a second as he tried to process what was happening. Tears streamed down her face as she pressed her hands together, staring at with desperate eyes. Right then, a system notification popped up in front of him, letting him know that Chi Peak's last candidate for a disciple had just been found. The message warned him, if he didn't pick a disciple soon, the other 4 peaks might just step in and assign one to him whether he liked it or not. Yuan looked at the situation and sighed inside. Great, another headache. The sect was sending him problem students again, whether he wanted them or not. He glanced at the new arrival, a girl this time. Well, whatever. He figured she probably wouldn't be much trouble, and there was no way she'd end up outshining him or catching their master's attention more than he could. So he decided to just accept it and move on. He just went with it, no big deal. His face brightened as she got what she wanted. The older guys nearby traded glances, their minds racing, trying to figure out what was into. They watched, proud of herself for pulling this off. But deep down, really just did what he had to. There wasn't much of an option for him. Yuan wrapped things up and let everyone know he was heading out. Just as he turned to leave, Su Yang called out to him, asking him to wait because he had a few questions. Yuan paused, ready to listen, while the rest of the group watched the two, curious about what was coming next. Heard someone mention the onion pill formula and offer to trade a foundation-building spiritual item if he could explain it. That caught his attention right away. He was curious about the formula, and the thought of getting a valuable item in exchange was hard to ignore. He wondered what kind of questions would come up, and if he really had the answers they were looking for. Ren heard about the foundation-building spiritual item, and knew right away that stuff wasn't cheap. He couldn't help but notice how weird it was that a disciple from Divine Medicine Peak was coming to Chi Yuan with questions about making pills. Yuan didn't waste any time and jumped in to ask his own question. That evening, decided to head down the mountain for a walk. He figured he could check things out while he was there. The other person seemed okay with it, and after that, they both started thinking about what they'd do next. Ron glanced over at Ling, signaling that it was time to head out. She understood right away and gave a small nod, ready to follow him. He fell in step behind him. After that, the two of them kept moving together, reached out and stopped Yang just as he was about to leave. He held on to him, clearly concerned about what Yang was about to do. His mind raced. Was Yang really going to ask about the formula? He wanted to make sure Yang knew what he was getting into before going any further. Stood out from the crowd with his natural talent, always coming up with ideas that surprised everyone. When it came to making pills, he seemed to see things differently than most people. About 2 weeks ago, he and his senior ran into each other while out for a walk. They ended up talking about some formulas, and that conversation turned out to be really helpful for his senior. Khan stared, trying to figure out what was going on. This guy's ideas didn't make any sense. He seemed totally out there. Didn't look impressed either. He pointed out that if someone was as strong as everyone said, he wouldn't be missing something as basic as a foundation-building item. Yang, on the other hand, kept his cool, not looking bothered at all, even though people were saying he was about to lose his own item for nothing. Sometimes looked like the guy in the room, but the next moment, he'd do something totally unpredictable. People couldn't always figure him out, but it was clear he saw things in his own way. Khan just went along with it, not really arguing. He seemed cool with whatever was happening and didn't make a big deal out of it. There were still some important things left to handle. Since no one spoke up, he figured it was time to start picking people for the next part. He stared hard at the disciple he'd been watching before, and the guy started to look uneasy. The moment felt tense. They headed over to Chi Peak, and Yuan was already there with. She glanced around at the place, taking in the view. This was Chi Peak, and it looked even more impressive up close than she'd expected. She wanted to know if their senior brother was actually the master around here, and what kind of guy this master was anyway. As soon as he heard her question, he stopped for a second, caught a little off guard. He started talking, trying to explain himself. He said his master was really beautiful. Couldn't believe what he just heard. That was definitely not the word he expected someone to use for their master. Yuan kept going, pointing out that their master wasn't just good-looking, but also had an impressive build. Ling started to wonder if all cultivators from the Obsession lineage acted this way. The thought left her uneasy. The new kid glanced over at his senior, a little unsure of what to do next. He wondered if it was okay to go meet the master and show some respect, since he'd just joined. He didn't want to mess up any of the traditions or look clueless in front of everyone. Yuan told her it wasn't possible. There was a rule about the mountaintop. No one could go up there unless they'd hit the Yuan pill stage. That's what Master always said. When she heard that, she just froze, not sure what to do next. He started thinking about the cultivation path and how tough it actually was. There were 7 stages. Qi refining came first, then foundation building, after that Yuan, divine infant, purple mansion, Yuan spirit, and finally Yang spirit. In their sect, only when someone reached the foundation building stage would they become a core disciple. But getting to Yuan, that was considered top tier, basically one of the elites. Even with his own skills and his family backing him every step of the way, he figured it would still take him over a decade just to get there. So he couldn't understand why his master would set the bar so high for him. He acted like it was no big deal. It crossed his mind that maybe Master just didn't want to run into him. When he heard that, couldn't believe anyone would think he was scared to see someone. That just wasn't him. The idea felt pretty ridiculous. She walked next to Yuan, her mind wandering. There was talk going around. After Qi Yuan met with Master, he vanished from the sect for ages. People wondered what rule he'd broken. While she was thinking about all this, Yuan brought up something else. He mentioned he hadn't planned on bringing anyone onto Qi Peak, so he hadn't set up a spot for her to stay. He motioned to a spot behind him, where some patches of grass and a few chunks of wood were scattered around. If you're good with your hands, you might as well throw together a straw hut and hang out there for a bit. He turned around to leave, glancing back as if to keep an eye on things while heading out. Just stood there frozen. He couldn't believe what had just happened. As the other guy walked off, was left staring, completely stunned, like his brain hadn't caught up yet. He looked around, not quite believing he had to build his own straw hut. Coming from the well-known clan, he never pictured himself doing something like this. Still, he paused for a moment, took a deep breath, and tried to steady himself. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. Her mind raced, but she kept telling herself to relax. After a moment, a new thought popped into her head. Even though his older teammate could be tough to deal with, he reminded himself why he came in the first place. He needed to track down that one person who had survived through all kinds of crazy disasters. Not long after, wrapped up building her tiny hut, she looked pretty pleased with herself. The whole thing was held together with her spiritual power, kind of like using invisible glue to keep the walls from falling apart. In her head, she was already thinking about how clever that trick was. She thought about how it might be a good idea to get on senior brother Kai's good side. With that in mind, she tried to get his attention. Stood outside waiting. He heard Yuan's voice from inside calling him in. Taking a breath, pushed open the door and stepped in, ready for whatever was about to happen next. Walked in and noticed Yuan was focused on his screen. He could tell right away Yuan was gaming, and Yuan just gave a quick nod to confirm it. Now the cultivation world was totally different from before. It wasn't quiet or boring anymore. The entertainment scene had blown up. Guys could check out pill gambling matches, hang out at lively brothels, watch sword immortals put on crazy dances, or even get into all sorts of games. Yuan held a jade slip that looked just like a gaming device guys would carry around. These jade slips had all kinds of games packed inside. Fighting games, dungeon crawlers, even some farming ones for when you wanted to chill. There were even some oddball games no one really talked about. If you could think of a game, it was probably in there. As soon as people noticed Yuan's jade slip, they couldn't help but get curious. Noticed his senior brother's jade slip, and thought it looked kind of different from the others. He wondered if his senior brother had spent the whole afternoon gaming again. She looked over, clearly annoyed. All day she'd been pushing herself, working hard non-stop, but he was still stuck at the Kai refining stage, just hanging back while everyone else trained. It bugged her that he didn't seem to put in the same effort. She pointed out that he was already at the top of Kai refining, just one step away from moving up to foundation building. Turns out she was at that same level too. Yuan responded to her after that. She watched him sitting there, totally focused, like nothing else in the world mattered. She tried to figure out what he meant by cultivating. From what she'd heard, people who followed the obsession path needed something specific they were really into. Looking at him, it seemed like maybe his thing was gaming, but she wondered if playing games all the time was really the same as cultivating, or if he was just hooked like anyone else who couldn't put down a controller. Cultivation was serious business, not something anyone could pull off just by gaming, not even those from the obsession lineage. That thought crossed her mind while Yuan waited, looking at her with that usual patient energy. He clearly wanted her to get to the point and just say whatever was on her mind. She didn't waste any time getting back to him. Her message was straight to the point. She let him know her straw hut was finally done. She was hoping that now her senior brother would show her how to train using Kai's method, but Yuan let her down easy. He told her that Kai's technique wasn't something she could actually learn. She frowned, wondering why things had to be this way. way. In her head, she started to wonder if there was something more going on with this technique. Maybe it had something to do with that mysterious expert everyone talked about. It seemed like she might have stumbled onto something important. Just then, Yuan spoke up. The cultivation technique turned out to be dangerous. He froze, not sure what to think. How could a training method like that actually be dangerous? Before he could figure it out, she just shrugged it off and reached out her hand, acting like it was no big deal. Yuan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small jade slip. He looked at it for a second before nodding, ready to move on. At that moment, Ling picked up the cultivation manual from Chi Peak, the one Chi Yuan had worked on for years. He stared at the pages, eyebrows furrowed, totally lost. None of it made sense to him, and he couldn't help but wonder if someone was messing with him. Watched Yuan do his thing and couldn't help but be impressed. The guy was actually tweaking cultivation techniques, something she always thought was way above his level. Usually, only people at the golden core stage could pull that off, but Yuan was still stuck at Chi refining. She tried to wrap her head around it, thinking there's no way it should be that simple. Still, she couldn't hide her smile. He nodded politely, showing respect. He understood that cultivation techniques were a big deal and not something to mess around with. Changing them without really knowing what you're doing could easily mess things up or even cause serious problems with his energy. He stayed calm, not letting anything show on his face. He heard the question about whether things would really be okay if they just left their training methods alone. The thought lingered in his mind, making him wonder if playing it safe was actually the best move. She knew it was actually the opposite. Messing with things without a plan always caused trouble. Her senior brother never seemed to think things through. He always acted before he really understood what was going on. That's just how it was with people from the obsession lineage, always making things complicated for everyone else. Later on, she walked back to her little hut, dropped down onto the bed, and started to. He started practicing, curious about how good the Kai Peak's cultivation technique actually was. With all the changes senior brother had made, he wasn't even sure if he'd get it or just end up confused. Still, he focused, ready to see what this Kai fire could really do. The refinement art was just a normal jade-level technique, nothing special. He'd already come across it before in his family's library. He noticed something different this time. Senior brother had changed this part, and honestly, it looked pretty legit. After practicing for a bit, she let out a sigh. She just couldn't do it. He knew he couldn't just stand by and watch his senior brother train like that. It seemed risky, and someone needed to step in before things got out of hand. Deciding it was best to get a second opinion, he grabbed the technique and headed off to find his sister for some advice. The story moves over to the Shan Yuan Forbidden Zone. In this place, a giant snake was locked in a fight with someone, both of them going all out. That person turned out to be Yuan. After he spoke, he thought about the snake. It was just a level 50, nothing too crazy. Wasn't afraid to act confident, even in tough spots. The game he played was all about fighting monsters and leveling up. Right now, he was in a place called Moon Gazing Continent, and more specifically, the Shan Yuan Forbidden Zone, one of the toughest areas in the whole game. When he first showed up, he started out at level 1. Things were rough at the beginning, but he kept pushing through, battling all kinds of monsters. After a long grind and a lot of close calls, he managed to make it all the way to level 80. He took down every monster that showed up, not letting any of them get past him. He looked at himself and realized just how strong he was in that moment. If this was real life, he figured he could probably take down the leader of the Divine Light sect with just one hit. That kind of power felt almost easy for him now. But after he lost, he glanced at the boss after checking out the monsters, waiting to see what the guy would do next. Now there was just the boss left. Everyone could feel the tension in the air as they faced off, knowing this was the final challenge. Brush was there, already at level 70. During the day, this thing just looks like an ordinary foxtail brush. But when night hits, it turns into a demon and goes after anyone it managed to charm earlier. Its attacks at night are so intense that even after logging off or going idle, it's not enough to stay safe. The only way to avoid it is to actually dig a pit and hide underground until morning. And then, there's. He aimed his sword straight ahead, his eyes locked on the target. After waiting so long, this was finally his shot at payback. He tightened his grip, ready to go all in and hit back hard. He ran straight at the demon hiding in the bushes, not letting it get away. He wasn't about to let this thing escape after all the trouble it caused. Out of nowhere, the brush turns on by itself. He disappeared for a while and made an attempt to. He got hit from behind, but when it happened, everything seemed to slow down for a second. He knew that trying to break through might turn into a disaster. He dropped to the ground right away, not moving at all. Yuan noticed the look on his friend's face. He could tell his friend was completely stunned by what just happened. This time he showed up ready. He had a confident look on his face, almost like he'd been waiting for this moment. He'd even brought some gear he made himself, all designed just for this situation. He lifted his sword and attacked. The heaven-breaking sword draw technique slammed down, splitting the ground open. The blow landed hard, tearing the brush demon apart. In just a second, it was gone, completely wiped out. After the fight ended, Yuan slid his sword back into its sheath, barely breaking a sweat. Right then, a system message popped up in front of him, letting him know he just cleared the Shan Yuan Forbidden Zone dungeon. The system handed out the rewards. Chi Yuan got 10 Heavenly Tao fragments and a divine brush. He picked up both items and started thinking about what to do next. After making it through the Shan Yuan Forbidden Zone, the group finally got to see what rewards were waiting for them. Everyone looked over the items, checking out what they'd earned for all the trouble they went through. The The atmosphere was charged with excitement and curiosity as they realized their efforts had actually paid off. The light shot straight into his body, like it was being pulled inside him. After seeing what just happened, Yuan closed his eyes for a moment, taking it all in. Now that he had the heavenly fragment, it felt like he was in charge of the whole Shan Yuan Forbidden Zone. The way this game worked really stood out to him. It wasn't like the usual stuff he played before. Still, he couldn't help but wonder why they called it a fragment instead of something else. The name didn't totally make sense to him, and that thought stuck in his mind as he tried to figure it out. He wondered if there might be more pieces out there. What would happen if he managed to get every single one? That thought kept spinning in his head. Then something else crossed his mind. He reached into his pocket and pulled out He holds the divine brush, thinking about how it's not just any tool. It's actually made from the rules themselves. With this, he can set the laws for the Shaman Forbidden Zone. He decides it's time to see what it can really do. He takes a moment to think about what to write. Then, out of nowhere, the answer pops into his head. He knows exactly what to do. Yuan writes something in. He's got a ladder with him, which basically means he can go wherever he wants without anyone stopping him. As he's doing this, he remembers that meme from Earth, the one where if you carry a ladder, you can just walk into any park without paying. After jotting it down, he starts thinking about whether he should make everyone wear a maintenance worker's uniform just to keep things organized. Then he checks the clock and realizes it's getting pretty late. He figured it was time to go find Yuga. Deciding he was done with writing for now, he quit the game and glanced at the clock. It was already late, so he headed out, ready to meet up with Yuga. Yuga drops the jade on the table and heads out the door, not looking back. He pressed the knife against his stomach, holding it steady. At the same time, he motioned that he was ready to take the other guy along with him. Then, without hesitating, he started to walk forward. Everyone knew was kind of odd, but nobody could deny he was famous around the sect. Even though people thought he acted weird, a lot of the other cultivators started copying him, taking their weapons out for walks just like he did. It became a thing, and soon, you'd see groups of them strolling around with their swords, pretending it was totally normal. Yuan stood there, knife in hand, ready to make his next move. He glanced at the girl and made a joke about her turtle, saying it might get smarter after a few thousand years. The comment didn't sit well with the girl. She got annoyed by his words, thinking to herself that if he couldn't say anything nice, he shouldn't say anything at all. She even thought his knife would probably take just as long to get any smarter. With that, she turned and walked away. The report came through, asking when Snife would finally get some spirit. Right away, two guys nearby couldn't hold back their laughter. They joked about how Weapon was basically just a kitchen knife and couldn't possibly do anything special like talk. Yuan listened and got ready to answer. It probably wouldn't even take a year, maybe just a little while longer. The girl just laughed at that. The guys glanced at each other, both thinking the same thing. Senior brother was acting weird again. Juga was keeping an eye on everything going on. The guy next to him leaned in, clearly not trusting what was happening and wanted Juga to stay sharp. Juga didn't say anything, but you could tell he was thinking things through, not planning to get tricked that easily. Everyone could see how wild he was acting. Nobody really believed he knew anything about making pills, but then Juga spoke up. Everyone in the room stopped when someone spoke up, pointing out that Qi Yuan had actually changed the soul forging technique and tried it out on his own. No one knew if he pulled it off, but it took guts to even try. Instead of making fun of him, maybe everyone should give him some credit. The others, caught off guard, looked like they hadn't seen the bigger picture at all. Walked over to Yuan, catching everyone's attention. The other disciples nearby straightened up, showing respect like they always did when someone important showed up. They all nodded in agreement, knowing Yang's words carried a lot of weight. People knew that Yang was no joke. He was already strong at the Foundation establishment level, so others looked up to him. As he started to speak, everyone focused on what he would say next. He'd been busy helping out while his master worked on some medicine, which is why he showed up later than usual. Yuan just waved it off, not making a big deal about it. Pulled out a pill formula he'd found in some cave and handed it over to, wanting his opinion. Took the formula, eyes moving over the details, checking it out carefully. He watches as the system checks out the pill formula. It turns out this is a nourishing origin pill recipe. The system points out that if he swaps red-yellow herb for glossy privet and trades rum's drum for lesser sunflower, the pill could work way better, like 50% stronger. Even better, it'd be a lot safer too, since the toxicity would drop by about 10 to 20%. After looking over the info, he gets it. Yang points out some problems in the pill recipe. He suggests swapping out the red-yellow herb for glossy privet and using lesser sunflower instead of rum's drum. The guy next to Yang doesn't like what he's hearing at all. He gets annoyed, thinking Yang has no idea what he's talking about, especially since he barely even looked at the formula. Yuan stared at the glossy leaves of the privet by the pond, his mind drifting. The lesser sunflower caught his eye next, but something kept bugging him. He kept thinking about the spiritual material he needed for Foundation establishment, wondering where it could be. He reaches into his pocket and pulls something out. It's a small chunk of purple crystal jade, catching the light just right. There was some bamboo and this special material that 8th graders used to help them get stronger. Everyone heard about it. There are 9 levels when it comes to foundation establishment spiritual materials, split into lower, middle, and upper grades. People say there are even rarer kinds out there that go beyond those. The better the grade, the more impressive the results and the higher the potential. But these materials cost a fortune. Even the basic type, like purple crystal jade bamboo from the lower grades, is way out of reach for most regular disciples in the divine light sect. Looks over the purple crystal jade bamboo and points out that it's not top quality. He tells Qi Yuan that if he isn't in a rush, he could save up more spirit stones and trade them in along with the bamboo for a better material to help him build a stronger foundation. Qi Yuan just smiles, letting know he appreciates the advice, but he's fine with what he's got. Accepts it and lets out a sigh. He can't help but think about how things could have been different for. If hadn't messed things up with their master, he'd probably be way ahead by now, probably already hit the foundation establishment stage. Getting his hands on better materials wouldn't even be a challenge, even the really rare stuff. These thoughts run through his mind as he looks at his junior brother. Even the divine light sect master always acted extra polite around master. She was known as a divine infant stage powerhouse, someone who'd been in charge for more than 1,000 years. Only someone at her level could live that long, and even the stuff she didn't care about was crazy valuable. Messing with her was a huge mistake, but he still managed to get on her bad side. Now, because of that, she completely cut him off from everything he needed. Yuan looked pretty stubborn, standing his ground even when everyone expected him to back down. The idea of apologizing didn't even cross his mind. He honestly didn't think he'd done anything wrong. When he started to speak up, everyone around him got tense. Juga, especially, suddenly went still, realizing what Yuan might say next. The whole mood in the room shifted as everyone waited to see what would happen. Yuan kept going, not bothered at all by how everyone else seemed nervous around. He didn't seem scared like the others, like he had some kind of reason to be chill about it. But just as Yuan was about to explain himself, cut him off. Vega clapped his hand over his mouth, trying to keep himself from blurting out anything else. He shot a quick look over at junior brother Kai, hoping he'd get the message to stay quiet. He let go and turned away, heading back to where he'd been working on the pill formula. Without wasting any time, he made his way straight to Divine Medicine Peak, planning to pick up where he left off. The guy next to him wasn't too happy about what was going on. He thought it was weird that who didn't even belong to their group was being asked to help with the pill formula. Instead of sticking around, he decided it was better to just go get the purple crystal jade bamboo himself. When that happened, the mood shifted a bit. Shot a cold look at the guy, his eyes sharp and serious. The guy froze for a second, clearly caught off guard. He started to get nervous, fumbling for words and trying to smooth things over, not wanting to get on's bad side. He just hoped you wouldn't come back with nothing and end up wasting the medicine, but didn't think he got it at all. Deep down, was sure he had his own reasons and plans, even if nobody else could see them yet. He decided to make a few batches and check how they matched up with the formula. He wanted to see what would happen. After that, the scene changes. Night had settled in, and he found himself still on edge, his thoughts racing as he looked out at another mountaintop. He walks into his room and takes the rope off his knife. He puts the plate down and lets everyone know dinner's over. Now it's game time. But then he spots his J-tablet and his eyes go wide. His eyes went wide as he realized something was off. He stared at the screen, surprised to see that he was already logged in. The scene jumped back to when Yuan got his hands on that game Jade slip for the first time. He didn't really know what to make of it at first. It just looked like another weird piece of tech. He stared at the screen, trying to figure out what it even did. Back then, Kai Yuan looked at the Jade and tried to figure out what it was. He wasn't sure if you could even use it to talk to anyone. At that point in the story, the game map wasn't open yet, but inside the Jade slip, he noticed there was already one friend added. That little detail made Kai Yuan feel like he'd scored a win. Qi Yuan noticed the Imperial Guard Chancellor and couldn't help but wonder who she was. The way she talked was kind of strange, almost like someone who's used to running a big company or something. She gave off the vibe of someone who's probably rich and definitely not bad looking. That thought made Qi Yuan smirk a little, an idea popping into his head. He decided to mess with her just for fun, but when he did, she actually got mad. He lets out a quiet laugh, thinking she actually looks kind of cute. Back when was stuck in the hospital, he didn't have any friends. The only person he could talk to was the girl from the Jade slip. But after the game map updated, his friend list was white and she was gone. Just like that, he lost his only friend. Now the story shifts back to the present. Back in the present, Yuan stared at the online notification on his screen. He hadn't expected to come across this person again, and it threw him off for a moment. He wasn't sure what to say or how to start. For a while, he just sat there, not typing anything, caught between wanting to reach out and not knowing how to begin. He pauses for a second before putting his hands on the keyboard. He starts to type, stops, and deletes what he wrote. That doesn't sound right. He tries a different way, thinking it over. After a couple more changes, he finally gets his words down and hits send. He taps send, hoping for a quick reply. The scene moves over to show what's happening on the other side. In the Xi'an Kingdom, the Empress motioned for her to come over. The maids leave the room. After they're out, she lets out a sigh and relaxes a little. He knew he couldn't trust anyone, not even the maids nearby. Even though they acted polite, there was always this feeling that someone was watching or listening, waiting for him to slip up. It made him keep his guard up all the time, never really letting himself relax. She sat there knowing she was the Empress of the South Kingdom, but honestly she felt stuck. The title looked impressive, Jin Li Empress, but deep down she realized there wasn't much she could do. Jin Lee thinks back to how things used to be. 10 years earlier, when her dad passed away, she ended up taking the throne at only 7. Back then, it felt like she was just a figurehead, no real power, and nobody she could really trust. The demon race kept attacking, and other countries looked at South like it was weak and easy to mess with. Over the years, the kingdom got hit with problem after problem, barely making it through each time. She stands there, fists tight, anger showing all over her face. News had just dropped that Prime Minister Sima Ting was working with the Northern Conquered. Things got worse when she found out Aunt Chin, the person she trusted the most, had been caught off guard and seriously hurt. Every day seemed to bring more problems for her. Aunt Chin wasn't just family. She was known as one of the strongest around, someone that Jin Lee always counted on. Now, with Aunt Chin down, it felt like the ground was slipping from under her feet. Jin Lee's chest tightened with anger. He couldn't stop thinking about Sima Ting. The injury, everything that happened to Jin, he knew deep down who was behind it all. She sits there, zoned out, her mind wandering. He pulls off his clothes and climbs into the bath. The second she steps into the water, the tiredness hanging over her all day just fades. She's still worn out, but the cool water gives her a little relief, almost like she can breathe easier for the first time in hours. She notices a faint glow nearby and leans in for a closer look. She's surprised. It's the Linglong jade. The scene shifts to a memory from the past. There's this jade, a famous treasure that's pretty well known in stories. It's actually two pieces that go together, and if two people each have one, they can talk to each other no matter how far apart they are. One piece of the jade is kept locked up in the royal treasury of the South Kingdom. About a year ago, something important happened connected to this jade. When stopped by the royal treasury, she noticed a piece of jade. She didn't really think much about it and just ended up taking it with her, not realizing what she'd done at the time. The moment she touched the jade, something strange happened. It was almost like the jade wanted her to notice it, as if it was pulling her in. After that, the jade somehow helped her meet someone really interesting. She started chatting with this new person, curious about what would happen next. He remembered the time spent with that guy, the one who always said weird stuff nobody else really understood. Still, it was impossible not to laugh around him. Even the Empress, usually distant and alone, would end up smiling when he was there. For a little while, she let her guard down and just enjoyed the moment. Now, things had come full circle, back to how it all ended. Right now, the jade glows and a message pops up. She checks it, then quickly starts typing a reply. She lets the person know she's here. In her head, she remembers it's been 6 months since she last got a message like this. She had started to wonder if something bad had happened. Then she starts writing another message. Nobody really knew where he'd been all this time. Meanwhile, she was on the other side, waiting. Answers explaining that he tried to invite Jean to hunt monsters, but once he got inside the map, he couldn't message anyone. Seeing his message, Jean Lee tilts her head, trying to figure out what he means. Hunting monsters probably means fighting demons, she thinks. Maybe is actually a demon hunter. She quickly types out another reply. He wondered if that place was safe, or if he needed to watch his back. Ron didn't seem worried at all. He thought players like them were supposed to be the real threat, not the ones in danger. Monsters were just there to help them level up, nothing more. Ron figured there was no point stressing over it and suggested teaming up. He also remembered that working with girls helped everyone get their energy back quicker, so he threw that out there too. Frowned a little, surprised that he wanted her to join him to hunt demons. She wasn't sure what to think, but she tried to act cool about it. He let out a quiet sigh and started texting back. Something important was going on at home, so he just couldn't make it. Not long after, Kai Yuan messaged him again, asking if he was really too busy to even play games. After a moment, she stopped for a second and wondered where he was right then. Yuan replies, letting her know he'd just been in the Shan Yuan Forbidden Zone, and now he's on his way to the Forbidden Zone. As soon as Jin Lee sees the names pop up, the color drains from her face. She freezes, not able to move or think for a second. Inside, her mind races as she realizes what these names mean. Shan Yuan Forbidden Zone, Forbidden Zone. Those places are known as 2 of the 4 big no-go areas, the kind everyone hears about but never wants to get near. Everyone always said the moon-gazing continent went on forever, stretching out so far it was hard to believe. People there lived knowing humans and demons were always at odds, ready to clash at any moment. Even with all that tension, there was something out there that made both sides uneasy. It wasn't another enemy or some hidden race. Instead, it was the 4 forbidden zones and that one place everyone whispered about, the Absolute Land. And at the center of all those rumors and fears was Jean Lee's mind, a place even the bravest didn't dare to mess with. The place is a total mess. Not even the strongest demon emperors would risk going in there. Anyone who tries just ends up dead. No one makes it out. Then there's Heaven's Absolute, which is even scarier. Every emperor who's gone in has never come back. The Shan Yuan Forbidden Zone sits deep inside the South Kingdom, not too far from the capital, just a few hundred li away. People say this place popped up over the grave of some ultimate warrior, and the whole area has always had a reputation for being off-limits and dangerous. When the Empress hears that Qi Yuan has been spending his time there hunting monsters, she can't even process it at first. It just sounds unreal. Her hands shake as she types out a message, not sure if he's being serious or just messing around. Qi Yuan doesn't leave her hanging. He shoots back a reply right away, insisting he's telling the truth and even saying he wanted to invite her to join him. He admits that running. Jean Lee stops typing when she reads the message. Her hands start shaking and she can't believe what she's seeing. The words keep running through her head and it freaks her out. She tries to focus, but it's hard when her mind's going a mile a minute. He wondered what the guy really meant. The demons in the Shan Yuan Forbidden Zone weren't just everywhere. They were insanely strong. Hardly anyone in the whole history of the moon-gazing continent had ever made it out of that place alive. When someone claimed they cleared the Shan Yuan Forbidden Zone, it was almost impossible to believe. Even the strongest emperors wouldn't stand a chance.
Lately, I've had a strong addiction to watching manhwa and manga recap videos. Every single day, I find myself binging one after another, losing hours and days doing absolutely nothing productive. And honestly, it's getting out of hand. So, maybe we can make these viral videos too. I mean, look at the views, the growth, the community these creators are building. It looks simple, right? But that's a trap. You go down this endless rabbit hole, spending money, losing sleep, hiring editors and writers from Fiverr and Upwork, and still feel like you've been robbed. Because don't forget how emotional the YouTube algorithm can be with making videos go viral. It's unpredictable, especially when the market's saturated, competition's relentless, and somehow other creators are dropping 10-hour videos daily while you're stuck trying to finish one. That's when I realized something had to change. So, I built the solution, the Web2 Narrative Suite, a complete one-click system that handles everything from cropping, script narration, text-to-speech, image processing, and full video generation in one smooth process. Save money, reduce hours of work, and have a tool that only gives you straight results. Click on the link down below and experience it for yourself. And if you want even more tools to supercharge your YouTube recap journey, visit my Ko-Fi and Patreon pages where I drop weekly new tools designed to keep you ahead as AI continues to steal our jobs. So tap in now before you get left behind.